Hello, everyone, and happy Halloween from the Irish Sports Daily team. This is Hit and Hustle Mailbag Show bye-week edition. We've been doing mailbags on the bye weeks this year, so we're doing another one today. We got some really good questions from ISD customers. It is Halloween, so happy Halloween to all of you and your kids and everything like that. The Dodgers are world champions, Jamie. The world
Hell
champion.
yeah.
LA Dodgers. Pretty excited about it. The house was excited. My son jumping up and down, doing that whole thing. It was a very good time. So we enjoyed that. If you're a Dodger fan, then congratulations to you. And if you are not, then better luck next year. So we're going to be talking about the questions that we got from Irish Sports Daily customers today. We like what about 21 questions there. So we're going to answer those. This is usually a long show, so you gotta strap in for the long one today. So that's what we got for you. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is, we're going to go live. As always, links to the podcast are in the description below. And this show, as always, is brought to you by ESQ Clothing. It's almost holiday season. Especially once you get to Halloween, Jamie. That's when you know Thanksgiving's coming, Christmas is coming. You got to get a head start on all that Christmas shopping, the holiday shopping. There's galas, there's holiday parties, there's all those things. And ESQ's got you covered for all that you need. They've got over a decade of making best custom clothing available. And of course, this is all from Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. ESQ will help you look and feel your best from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for galas and holiday events. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Give yourself and your loved ones the gift of style. Jamie, your son, what's his Halloween costume this year?
He's a popcorn bucket. He's it's like just
That's
like a thing that
tremendous.
just straps over top, and it's just like a big old popcorn. There's just like kernels that attach to it. And it's a nice and easy one. Nice and easy one. Um, Although he's the kind of guy who takes off his doesn't like wearing those outfits all day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think in future years we need to make it more like, hey, this clothes that he's wearing, it's like he's dressed like somebody. So then it's
Mm,
just that's what he is today. So it's like, gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt, Hans and Franz. Nice and simple.
perfect. Hans
Yeah.
and Franz, that's good stuff. Yeah, the big to do is tough for kids because they get tired of it. Like you said, they don't like it.
Yeah. What about your
That's
kid?
good. That's good. Although the popcorn bucket is unique. I've never seen that, or at least I don't recall seeing that. Um, good
It's a
job.
Target one. It's a Target one.
Is it? Is it really?
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, I like that. I like that's unique. So let's.
No free ads, but it's a
Uh,
Target.
okay. I don't hear a lot of you don't hear a lot of Target ads going on around.
No, no, no,
People,
no.
people,
Yeah.
people know about Target, so it's all good. My kids, my daughters, thing one and thing two. So the ten
Oh,
year old
nice.
is the 10-year-old is thing one, the 5-year-old is thing two, and Wesley is he's Pikachu. He's got
Oh,
a
that's
little
a good one.
Pikachu outfit, so it's good. We're all very excited. So again, happy Halloween to everyone's children today. Let's get into it, Jamie. Let's just get into the questions because we have a lot, and there's a lot to get to. And so the first one is going to come from Mayday. The Notre Dame staff has been killing it with their evaluations of recruits the last few years. What exactly is giving them the edge in these evaluations besides Bowden is really good? Are they spotting things on film? Is it just camp workouts, genetics, lots of progeny of NFL and college greats bolstering our ranks lately, or just all of the above? So, what would we've noted a few times like Notre Dame's very good at evals for their recruiting, and they've got a lot of hits on guys that aren't the highest ranked players. So, what would you attribute this to? Or is it a combination of things like Mayday kind of alludes to there?
Yeah, I think it is a combination of things. And I do think that you have to give credit to obviously not just Chad Bowden, but the staff
Mhm.
in general. And I'm talking about not just the coaching staff, but also like, the scouting staff, guys like Caleb Davis and Matt Jansen and like all those guys and the work they put into. Um, I think if you're going to look at one of the biggest things is that they, one, so many of these guys had success. Well, a lot of these guys are obviously from Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Bearcats program. That's where they kind of got their start. And they've seen guys have success and seen what kind of works and what translates. And that has been like a huge thing with their evaluations, right? Is that they've like looked at a lot of stuff like, hey, this guy is very similar to this guy that we had before. We think he projects here. So I think that's all, that's part of it. And the other big piece of it is that they don't take exceptions when it comes to size stuff unless someone has some other kind of exceptional trait,
Yeah.
right? So they're really looking at like, they really care about measurements, about testing, and all that kind of stuff. And then, they want obviously that to translate on film and stuff too, but they obviously think they can develop these guys and do a good job when they get them on campus. And for the most part, they have, right? So I think it's just really like a combination of things. And and then this other thing too is that they don't stop when like there's a lot of teams that it's like, well, it's senior year, on to 2026, right? Like that
Yeah.
they're all their focus is there. And obviously Notre Dame is, working on 2026 and all that too, but they're still very much like getting like 2025 kids. They're very evaluating, and there's so many of these kids that can go missed to not give like a full evaluation of somebody, to not like use their last season in high school football is just so stupid.
Right.
But I understand why you have to have like early evaluations, and they've been good at like kind of projecting guys. But really, too, they've looked at guys that have like, hey, this guy, have this guy's on the radar, and then all of a sudden we'll watch a senior film, and then boom, and then they still go after those guys. And where it's not like I would say a lot of the times when it was during the Brian Kelly era, it was a lot of like plan B, like, hey, we're not getting these guys. Geez, we better start looking at these guys. And they weren't like continuing on the same type of evaluation path that the current staff has done in terms of like, hey, we're just constantly looking for guys.
Yeah. And so I think because of that, I try not to fret over who the players Notre Dame is getting and more focus on like, some of the misses, because you're adding on to, but basically the misses that you have, they're adding on to players that I think we can feel good about how they project them. If Notre Dame projects a player a certain kind of way, I think you can feel good about that projection and that evaluation. When they're going after someone and they don't get them, those are the kind of misses that. So, like a perfect example of this is KVA, who's a player they did land, right? The other players they landed in the class, like these are good players, right? And you feel good about them and the way that they're going to develop while their time is at Notre Dame. But landing those top guys like KVA, like those are the things that I think fans can fairly harp on. And it's another reason why like there's a question about Jerome Bettis Jr. in here. And I think because of the way that Kennedy, like I was not very high on Kennedy Urlacher last year. I don't think you were either. And he looks like a good player. Like, it looks like he's going to be a helpful player for Notre Dame. This is why I think that fans should give some grace to someone like Jerome Bettis Jr., where it's like, look, whatever we think, Notre Dame's staff has a good hit rate here. So let's give some grace and let's see how it works out. The misses are the misses, and those need to be evaluated as well. But from an evaluation standpoint, from the staff, they've done a really good job. So it's a good question from Mayday. Scott from CLT asked, I know your team being ISD has to be careful about player absences. It would be helpful to know if Onye's absence is one where he can return this season. He was starting to ascend. Can you elaborate on the situation the best you can? So I think the best we can elaborate is when a player is away from the program for personal reasons, unless there's something in the public record, right? that says what's going on, then we don't really dig into those things and we don't speculate on those things. It could be any number of things, right? Like just imagine in your own life what could come up. And we don't know what it is, but I'm just saying like anything could come up, and to speculate on it is it's just not what we do. It's not
Yeah,
correct, right?
it's
Like it's not the
unfair.
right thing. Yeah, it's unfair to him, it's unfair to the university, it's unfair to everybody. Um, all we can kind of report on is we don't believe he is with the team at this moment, and whether or not he rejoins the team at any point is unclear.
Yeah,
Um,
if we knew he was going to come back, or if we knew that there's a chance, the truth is we just don't know about anything, so we can't really. Unfortunately, we can't even say, yeah, he'll be back here, he'll be back then. What? No idea. We don't know at this
yeah,
point. So just hope hope for the best for Jason, and just got to keep it moving.
yeah. We hope he's fine. We hope people close to him are fine. And other than that, we just kind of let those things go as they are. They're kind of outside the purview of what we do. But it's a fair question. I understand. Philly ND fan asks thoughts on Jerome Bettis' senior film. So I know you're always monitoring these things, Jamie. Where are you at on Jerome Bettis' film here?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely improved. I thought, he looks better, as he should, as a
Mm-hmm.
senior than he did as a junior and sophomore. Um, I love his size. I've been impressed with his ball skills, him winning like contested catches. Um, he still runs. He runs a very limited route tree. Based on what they run at his high school, what he's asked to do. So that's not on him, but um, so I don't. It's. I mean, it could be very much like how we were talking about Kenny Urlacher. How we're like, man, Kenny Urlacher's playing this role in this defense that does not like fit him. So, maybe with other development and working on some of these other kind of skills, you'd see a little bit more from, Bettis Jr. In certain respects. But I think, you do see more of like more after the catch stuff, more, him just playmaking in general. I don't think for anyone who thinks that, oh, maybe he can play safety, I just don't see it. I don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's shown some physicality there, but I just don't see the kind of like fluidity there that would make sense. Um, yeah, but I mean, he looks to me, if I was going to say, he's like, I wouldn't put him in the, Micah Jones was a kid that I was like, I watched his film and I watched him in person and I was like, I just don't think that he has much of a chance of playing at Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say that with Jerome Bettis Jr. Like I would say, even just by watching the film and not even talking about the stuff that we don't know about or whatever that Greg was saying earlier, I think Jerome Bettis has a chance to, be a contributor at Notre Dame. And I'm kind of excited to see what he looks like when he gets to Notre Dame.
I think the physical traits give him a chance. I think he can physically do it, right? It's just like finding that where is he going to be, right? Or what type of player is he going to be, you know? But from a physical standpoint, I think that he's there and he has the type of body and he has the type of physical skills that I think give him, like you said, give him a chance at Notre Dame. Um, Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago, is asking if his name wasn't Bettis, would he have a Notre Dame offer or be a preferred walk on or whatever? I mean, that's kind of unknowable, right? He is a Georgia athlete, and Notre Dame's been in Georgia, right? So that helps a lot. Sometimes I think what
It's
I would
also like
say,
saying if, Kennedy Urlacher's name wasn't Urlacher,
yeah,
like
like
it's,
I think sometimes there are a lot of players in high school that are probably similar to him in that it, can they play at Notre Dame? Yeah, like maybe they could. You can't go after all of them, but Jerome Bettis Jr. Because his name is what it is, then Notre Dame will give him a look instead of some random player from wherever, right? Because look, how many times is there there's good players that ended up at Boise State that could end up at Notre Dame, right? Like you can't recruit everyone. If someone of this caliber ends up on Notre Dame's radar because of who his dad is, then you do it, right? Like look, here's a perfect example. Emmett Mosley's son, who was at Servite, Emmett Mosley Jr. Notre Dame looked at him and they didn't take him, right? Just because you get looked at because of your name or whoever it might doesn't mean you're a take, right? Notre Dame took Jerome Bettis Jr. So like they see something there that they wanted to capitalize on, and so we just kind of have to take it. Just because every former Notre Dame player's kid doesn't end up getting offered by Notre Dame or pursued by Notre Dame, so it's just something to keep in mind as well. Keenan Knight, non-ND question. Why has Mack Brown struggled at North Carolina? Great recruiter and location, great decade at Texas with a national championship, sent quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers to the NFL, but continues to underachieve.
I think biggest thing is just his assistant coaches. I don't think he's done a great job hiring there, specifically like at coordinator. Those were misses for them, specifically a defensive coordinator. Like this is the first year that they've had like a semi, decent defense. That shouldn't happen. They recruited and landed like a ton of like 4 and 5-star kids that like none of them hit big. Like none of them did. Why does that happen? Like it happens because of development within the program, right? Like that's basically kind of where it is. I mean, some of those could be missed evaluations too, or whatever, right? But like all of them, like then I think it's like more of like what's going on with the program, whether it's like position coaches, coordinator obviously is a big part of it, but there's just a lot of things like that where they should have just been a lot better than they have been. And really too, the ACC has not been a good conference, like in terms of like depth. There's no reason why they couldn't have been like at the very least, like, in that tier behind, Clemson and that kind of tier there for like the whole time, really. And if you think about it too, they had Sam Hartman and they had not Sam Hartman, sorry.
Sam Howell.
Sam Howell and Drake May. Those are like two of the better quarterbacks in the ACC during that time. Both really, really good college players. So, they should have been better.
What's the value add of Mack Brown himself beyond being a CEO from a football standpoint, right? It's just not really there. The other part is if you're going to just be a CEO guy, then you got to nail your coordinators.
Yes.
You got to nail them. And he did well with Phil Longo, but then what did he have on defense all that time? It was just a mess. You cannot miss on your coordinators if you aren't a guy where it's like Marcus Freeman, right? He nailed Al Golden, but like he also is a value add to the defense itself. He's a value add to the linebacker position, right? To the overall culture of the defense because he is a defensive guy. He's a defensive coordinator. He adds value there. Mack Brown is like true CEO guy. How many recruiting visits he's going on? Like he's a closer as a recruiter, and he's done well there for sure. But like you can't just miss on your DC like that. You can't. And you can't be middling, and that's the problem, right? And he doesn't have that talent advantage like he had in Texas, where it's just like the one thing he did is he just shut down that whole state and he got whoever he wanted. You're just not doing that at North Carolina. There's just not that talent base that he has. And so, look, it's a good way to have good teams, but it's not how to have a great team and to be the type of team that's on winning our conference, like on a over and over basis. So it's just kind of, they're in that we're going to, every now and then we'll finish 9-3, but then every now and then we'll go 6-6 or 7-5 or whatever it is. And that's what North Carolina is. Unless they completely just hit home runs on coordinators. Scott from CLT, another question. Following the bye week, name 3 of the most important improvements by a player or positional unit you would like to see starting with the next game. Where you at, Jamie?
I think offensive line. I would say just you get another week with Billy Schrauth back. I don't think they played bad against Navy by any means, but it's like you're going to play Florida State isn't good. They're not a good football team, but they do have good defensive linemen, like guys who are going to be drafted in the NFL. Like they have some real guys. Maybe those guys won't play hard all game because of what's going on with them, but like those are guys who could like dominate a rep, and so you're gonna have to play at a higher level there. So I think that's something I want to see because it's the best defensive line that they're going to play in these next 4 games. So I'm definitely looking at that. I think always with loved what you've seen with the passing game and just like the improvements, just want to see that continue, right? Want to see that continuing. And then I think, when they're getting back to on defense, I want to see now that you get back to playing a conventional offense, a regular offense again, where it wasn't like a day for like Greg Bowen didn't have like a great day against Navy, but I want to see him continue that like ascension that he was on. I want to see a lot of those guys on defense who have just been ascending players kind of keep continuing to do that as they get back into the flow of things.
Yeah, I think and check your mic. The scratchy thing is going again. I think for me, the O-line you mentioned is good from a cohesion standpoint, right? There's another question later about how much the O-line can improve. I think from a cohesion standpoint is where I want to see things get better. They do have too many missed assignments. I feel like there's so many times when I feel like, man, they're just not getting to the Mike backer. Like the guy sitting right in the middle of the field is making the play. And I don't know enough about what they're trying to do and what the rules are for that. So I don't want to put blame or assign responsibility to any one player. I'm just saying like there's too many times where the Mike backer's just sitting there and he stuffs up the play. And so that's got to get corrected because I feel like that's just, assignment stuff. It makes sense. Like there's players in and out of the lineup and things of that nature. That is where I think they can make the most improvement. And that's kind of what I'm looking for is just cohesion and the standard of play on the offensive line improving a little bit. There's a question here from Jason Burkhart that kind of blends into my answer. Do you guys feel that Notre Dame is not developing the wide receiver room, or do you see that the talent needs to be better? I think what we've seen is better wide receiver play with overall play of the passing game. And I think that's another one where I want to see a healthier Faison. And I want to see a more of an introduction to making Mitchell Evans the weapon that he can be. I just feel like they cannot be as good as an offense that they want to be. If you have a weapon like Mitchell Evans, you're not taking advantage of him, right? I feel like there's too much getting by with the passing game and the type of weapons that they have. Like you need some stellar play at some point from someone. And it doesn't have to be at the same time. You could have a big Faison game. You could have a big Mitchell Evans game, but something to show that there is an elevation of a certain player in the ability to kind of take advantage of that player in a matchup. Notre Dame's spreading it around right now, and that's good, right? And that's fine. But I think they do need just a little bit higher level of play from, a Mitchell Evans or a Jordan Faison, maybe a Bo Collins, right? I feel like those 3 are their best chance to do that. Maybe Jaden Greathouse as well. I'm shortchanging him a little bit. Throw Jaden Greathouse in there. I do want to see that. And to the point that you made, I guess I'm kind of agreeing with everything, is getting the pass rush sorted, right? Maybe a big jump from Bryce Young on the pass rush standpoint. A big jump from Josh Burnham there, because I'm monitoring USC, right? I have this feeling that they might be this year's Clemson of last year, when Clemson was 4-4, and people thought, oh, that's a bad football team, and then they won out, and it turned out they were a pretty good football team. I think USC has some signs of that. I want to see how things go from here, because they in LA, I'm telling you that it's just different. It's different when Notre Dame plays in LA versus when they play them in South Bend. And I want I want them to be able to rush the passer against USC in that game. USC's had trouble with that throughout the year. I think that's a part where Notre Dame can really hurt them, but they do need to develop in that way. So that's kind of what I'm looking for coming out of the bye. Should be fun. Should be fun to track. Next question from Irish One. What do you think of the announced schedule update of Notre Dame at Miami to start off the season next year? Hopefully Cam is out of eligibility. I don't know. Is Cam Ward?
Cam Ward,
Is he?
yeah, he is.
Okay. All right. So he won't be
This
there.
is like his 6th year, so he's
okay.
Yeah.
By the way, let's get some fancy lawyer to get Riley Leonard a 5th year. All right.
Yeah,
I don't know how that can happen, but someone do it. But where are you at? Where are you? How do you feel about Notre Dame opening with Miami next year in Miami at that?
I mean, I don't think that's it's not good. I hate that Miami gets to duck Notre Dame this year and get back out of their 2024 game, and then all of a sudden it's going to make it, that's going to be like a day where obviously they're doing that on purpose, where that's going to be like just an unbearably humid day, right? Where it's going to be pretty brutal there. I don't know, but I don't think those. I mean, we saw how they responded to this Texas A&M matchup. They responded pretty good to it. I don't know where Miami is going to be at next year. Obviously, they're going to buy a ton of guys in the portal again, so that's something. Whoever you're planning on being like, oh, they're losing this guy. Well, plan on them buying whoever's available. That's just that is going to happen. They're going to lose a ton from this team, but they're going to buy a bunch of guys, and they've also recruited pretty well in terms of top end guys that could be pretty good. So, I mean, it's going to be a tough game. It's not a cakewalk for sure, but whoever that quarterback is in a new if it's either a transfer guy in a new offense or a guy who's there, who's getting his first big start in that kind of spot. I always think, if you look at where Notre Dame's depth chart is and the amount of guys that are coming back for them on defense, there's a lot of guys for freshman and sophomore who are really, really good players. And I would always kind of bet on Al Golden to get that guy a miserable time. So, I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what it looks like when we get kind of closer to that game. Would like it if that game was at a different time, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. I to me, Miami is similar to kind of Florida State in a way, right? They're going to buy a bunch of guys, yes, but it's kind of a rolling the dice every single time you're doing that. And sometimes you hit the portal and it's a home run, and sometimes you hit the portal and it's just kind of not. And like you said, it's kind of ridiculous that they get to duck Notre Dame, and then it's oh, by the way, you're opening at our place next year. It was supposed to be a Notre Dame home game this year. What's that about? So I don't like that. Like you said, it doesn't I think this next year's schedule is setting up to be different in a way where they don't have to. I think Michael Bryan, our friend Michael Bryan, he had a post on Twitter today about this. Notre Dame has a 2 losses might be okay next year's type of schedule, and so it doesn't really concern me that much. I like, to be honest, I like the opportunity to do it. I like the opportunity to go to Miami and play. I like the opportunity that Texas A&M has coming in. You have another SEC team in Arkansas, right? Where like you're playing these major conferences, you get credit for that sort of thing. Now you have to win, right? But I mean, Notre Dame's kind of always counting on that. Like everyone has to win, right? It's not special to Notre Dame. So I kind of like it. I like that Notre Dame is stepping out and taking on these challenges. It's what college football is today, and I appreciate that Notre Dame is kind of doing that. Fifth quarter Irish asks, how much growth do you think is realistic for the offensive line in the month of November? They are playing pretty solid overall and are a work in progress pass blocking. Can they get to a spot where they hold their own against top defenses, not win the battle up front, but hold up enough to score some points with the skill talent we have? I think that question's been answered, Jamie. I mean, the, the Texas A&M is that is a top opponent, especially for the line. They held up in that game. If they can hold up in that game, they can hold up, right? It's just a matter of, like you said, improving on the margin. So where can they improve? I kind of talked about it before. I didn't really get your thoughts on that. So I'm kind of curious, like, where do you think the improvement can come for Notre Dame on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that kind of like those little combo blocks, like making sure you're like getting the double team good enough to get off to the linebacker at the second level, which you see, but you don't see as much. You see so much of Jeremiah Love having to make a guy miss in the hole, right? But some of that is teams like, overplaying Notre Dame's run game because they're, they know they're not scared of Notre Dame's pass game, right? So that's part of it in terms of like running against unfavorable numbers and stuff too. But I think I think it's unreasonable to expect them to be like, oh man, this is like a really good offensive line by when they get into the playoff. I just think it'd just be incrementally better and better, just like all these little kind of areas. And I do think that they could be better against an A&M, like an A&M type of line than they were at the beginning of the season. So that's important, right? But you also got to remember, like, they were like basically playing with like, one arm tied behind their back the whole game of how they had to play in that game. And I still think they kind of have to play that way still. I haven't seen enough for them to say like, hey, you can, oh no, you can like totally change this and all of a sudden like bully ball now you can do this, that, or you can be LSU where you have all these kind of straight dropbacks. It's like, no, they're not there
Yeah,
yet.
and so they're not going to be dominant, right? They're just not, and that's okay. Like I don't think anyone should expect that. I just think like I think it's okay to just kind of admit it's going to be imperfect, and sometimes you have to work around these things. Just because something isn't as good as you want it to be doesn't mean that it's not workable and it can't get done, right? I think we want things. It's kind of like it's kind of like Notre Dame's D line as well. When it's like you lose Bubakar and you lose Batelho, it's like, yes, on its face, you think to yourself that this is an unacceptable loss for the team and it's going to cost them. Just in a vacuum, yeah, probably. But in reality, when it comes to playing a game, the situation is workable and they need to find a solution. A solution is possible, and Notre Dame needs to find it. It's the same thing on the offensive line, right? There is a way to do it. And look, to the credit of Mike Denbrock and to the credit of Joe Rudolph, they have made it work and it has been workable. And they are a top 10 rushing team on yards per attempt. They are a top 5 rushing team, I believe, in rushing touchdowns, and a lot of that is due to their running quarterback. But hey, when you have this is what a running quarterback can do for you. Take advantage of the talents that you have at your disposal and go be a good football team. And they've done that. So it's a credit to them. But again, assignments and technique and all those things, that's where they can make their biggest jumps, standard of play, that sort of thing. CFB Hertz. All right, buddy. Like you said, I did not. I cut off a big bunch of this question because there's a lot of stuff, and I can't
I
fit it
can
all
tell you,
in.
I read this whole thing, and CFB Hertz. First of all, I appreciate he did obviously put in a ton of time
Yeah,
research into this question,
yeah,
and we could say the gist of it is basically that all of these coaches who coached at Notre Dame post Holtz did worse at their next school.
right. So Davey, whatever you think of him at Notre Dame, he did not leave, go anywhere, and find success. Ty Willingham was more successful at Notre Dame than he was at his previous stops. Charlie Weiss, same thing, right? And then BK, we don't have a big sample size, but he's kind of trending to he's had better seasons at Notre Dame than he's had so far at LSU. So is it in fact harder to win at Notre Dame? What do you think? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the one thing you can say about all of those coaches is that they had way better talent at Notre Dame than they had at those other schools. So I don't think it's a fair comparison. It's not apples to apples, right? I think what you can say is those guys aren't good coaches. Those guys weren't good head coaches. It's not like they went and succeeded somewhere else because it's these guys, it wasn't going to happen for them. And I think even with Brian Kelly, you can say he's a good coach. Yeah, he's definitely a good coach. And I don't think the difference between what he's doing right now at LSU is very similar to what was happening at at Notre Dame. It's very much the same Brian Kelly experience where there's a lot of these games where it's oh man, just Brian Kelly's team, just something happened there where they weren't able to kind of close this or that or whatever. And you see his face, his exasperated face on the sidelines. And which I don't think, I mean, there's got to be something there with if that's happening to you all the time as a coach. And it happened a lot for him at Notre Dame. I think what Kelly was just, which is, I mean, truthful about it, he is able to get better recruits, in terms of star rankings and guys who that are going to be some of the defensive linemen that they've signed, Notre Dame just has no shot at those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's just something that is just realistic about it. But he's also playing in a much tougher league now. So the games from week to week are harder. That is something that you probably didn't think about it. You just thought, hey, I'm going to get better talent, I'm going to win. It's well, now your competition from week to week is tougher. And there's just the margin for error in that league right now is just so different. And in college football in general, it's so small. It's so small. I don't know what's going on with the scratching. I'm sorry, guys, because it's not. I don't know if it's the plug or whatever. So sorry there, Water Walker, but I don't know what the hell's going on there. But I can hear a little bit of it too, but I'm not moving. I'm trying to be extra, whatever. So I don't know what the heck's going on. Whatever. I'll try to move. I'll move around again after this. But anyways, I just think that it's hard to really kind of compare and say I don't think Brian Kelly's doing worse at LSU. I think he's the same guy that he was at Notre Dame is the gist of what I was trying to say.
I think the perception is he's underachieving at LSU, whereas he was just achieving at Notre Dame, right? And I think that's the expectation is, and to me, it's a different expectation. The expectation at Notre Dame is higher, and you have a higher, for Ty, you have a higher talent pool at Notre Dame than you do at Stanford. Bob Davie, he left Notre Dame and where'd he go? New Mexico? It's a hard job, right? It's a totally different type of test that you have to do. Same thing with Charlie Weiss. Like, he went from Notre Dame to Kansas. Like, it's hard to win at Kansas, right? Like, you have to be a completely different type of coach. Your program has to be run a completely different way. So like, I think it's harder to win at Notre Dame vis-a-vis the other top programs, but it's not harder to win at Notre Dame vis-a-vis Stanford or Kansas or New Mexico, right? Then it's very much easier, right? I think what Brian Kelly's doing at LSU is very similar to what he did at Notre Dame. It's just the perception is different because it's the SEC and he has more talent, and so people think, okay, you have more talent, you should exceed what you did at the previous stop. The challenges are different, right? Notre Dame's challenges for what they're trying to be versus what the rest of college football is trying to be are just they are larger, right? Notre Dame is where it is. Notre Dame is hanging on to, and this to me is to their credit. They are hanging on to the student athlete part of it, right? You got to go to class. It's going to be rigorous. It's going to be difficult. That we are making it so that your degree is actually worth something. The degree that you get from Notre Dame is earned and it is valuable, right? And that is the whole pitch, right? And that is not the case everywhere, right? You can go somewhere and get a good education. It doesn't mean that is within the culture of the university to give you that good education, right? You can go to McDonald's and get a healthy meal if you want. You could. That's not what McDonald's is, though. That's not what they're trying to do, rather than if you go to some natural food organic place, right? So it's just but because Notre Dame is selling itself that way, it is going to turn itself off to a certain type of player, which is like fine, right? That's nothing against those players or whoever. It's just the reality of the situation. So that's kind of my view on it. It's a good question though, right? Like it's good
Yeah, it is a good
fodder
question.
for everything. Con 6367, what's your ideal starting O-line next year?
God must not know that I hate these questions. Or
I
just like
like this question.
no, no,
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. So this is based on not less so performance and more on preference. Okay, I'm gonna go left tackle. I'm gonna go left tackle Lambert. I'm gonna go left guard Jagusaw. I'm gonna go center Craig, right guard Schrouth, right tackle Wagner. And the reason for that is I want size and I want athleticism. And I think that is and I want talent and pedigree. And that is, I think, Notre Dame's most talented. Hey, CFB Hertz is like right on my he's on my wavelength. Just switch the guards. Switch them around left and right. So that's where I'm at. That's where I go. Where are you at?
That's probably how I would do it too. But I do think like Anthony Knapp, like is probably he should be starting somewhere. But I don't know how that's going to work out. We also don't know like, where's Ashton Craig going to be after he comes back from his surgery, and Charles Jagusah's missed a lot of time. We don't know where Lambert is, so I think the fact that you could say that like Pendleton and Knapp aren't included there, but easily could be like, I think, high quality starter level type guys next year. I think that says a lot about it's a good problem to have. Like I think they're going to find a combination, and I just the big thing with me and why I just don't love this type of question, because it's so much of just being like Lambert. I mean, I love the tools. He's just a monster of a guy, but I gotta see I gotta see a lot more from him. And Jagusah, like, man, I was really hoping to see him a lot this year, so I could just say, hey, this is what we're gonna get from him. But I do think he probably ends up at guard. It's just my guess too.
Yeah, agree. Let's throw this out there: starting center Anthony Knapp. Why not?
Could be.
Could be, right? So, but this is why the question is difficult. There's like 9 different things that we have to see before we can actually make this like an honest like discussion, which we're not going to have. Like, we need to wait, right? We need to see how things progress. But as of Halloween night in 2024, that's kind of where I'm at. So, thank you for the question, Stonebreaker. USC can't help but let my mind wander to that game. What are their weaknesses? We need to punish them for letting PSU win. Inexcusable. I know they'll have talent at skill positions. Please tell me their lines are depleted and or bad. Appreciate everything as usual. Amazing job. I can tell you their lines are depleted and bad. The D line is very much depleted. They lost Barry Alexander to the portal. They lost Anthony Lucas to injury, so he's out. Their top, in my opinion, their top player, like kind of overall, is Eric Gentry, and he is redshirting the rest of the year because of concussions. They are better on defense than they have been, but I think those gains have kind of been lost, A, because teams got film on them, and B, because of the injuries, right? They are no longer the stout defensive team that they have been, right? They've kind of been exposed in the last few weeks. Their offensive line has been poor from a pass blocking standpoint. Pretty bad. They're running the ball well. They've been running the ball well this year, especially so without a running threat at quarterback. So they do have that going for them. I will say their passing game in the beginning of the year was based it wasn't very explosive. It's getting more explosive. It's becoming more of a threat, in my opinion. Deuce Robinson has come on. Mekhi Lemon is a big riser for them. He has really taken the reins as kind of like a dangerous player for their offense. And he scares me a good amount. Deuce Robinson scares me. Jacoby Lane's a good player. He's not great, but as a third guy, he does well. Miller Moss is just like, can Notre Dame pressure him? If Notre Dame can pressure him, they're going to be fine. If they can't, he's good enough to where it's like he'll find guys and he can make throws. That's kind of where it is. If Notre Dame plays a good football game, they'll win. Full stop. If Notre Dame plays well, they'll win the game. Because they can present too many problems to USC. And Al Golden, this is not his first day against a Lincoln Riley offense. So, but look, it's in LA. And I'll admit, like, it kind of freaks me out. And like I said before, I think USC has some Clemson 2023 vibes to them, where it's like good team, bad record. They have good metrics. Their metrics are pretty good, especially offensively. So that's where I come out. Where are you at, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, they easily could be, 7-1 right now.
6-2, 7-1.
6-2, 7-1, like that. They easily could be. So it is a little bit misleading, but also too, like, this isn't like Caleb Williams, that offense in that first year where they were really like, they were good up front that year, and they were, and Williams was awesome, and they had Jordan Addison, and then they just had enough other weapons, and they just presented a whole bunch of problems, and they have talent to make plays for sure. They have talent to make plays, but I think the one thing is that if Notre Dame's D-line kind of dominates that game against their O-line, which I think is probably pretty likely, that is something that I think, that changes the dynamics of what they can do on offense. They're 120th in PFF's pass blocking grade right now. And the run blocking isn't that great either. They run a lot to the scheme and good backs, right? Like, they have good talent there, right? But I don't know and also too, when quarterbacks can't run against Al Golden, it's just not a good thing. Like, because you got to take those free yards when you get them, because if you don't, like, if you try to just sit back and whatever, that just usually guys don't come open, right? That often. So, I don't know. I mean, obviously Lincoln Riley is a pretty good offensive coach for years and years and years. They still have like a top 10 offense in OF plus. The defense is just, they're so beat up. They're so beat up, and they're like, they're in the like 100s in like passing success rate against too, and they've had like a lot of injuries at DB as well. So it's going to be one of those things where you look at very closely of like what's the health of their team going into that game and what's their record. That's going to say a lot.
The premise of USC being dangerous is kind of predicated on them not losing to Washington, Nebraska, or UCLA. You know, that's why I'm kind of monitoring them. Notre Dame's defense is built to beat the exact type of offense that USC plays, which wasn't really the case in 2022, right? Which is why they had so much trouble, especially when, they were without Cam Hart and then Tariq Bracy, right? And I know Notre Dame's without Ben Morrison, but they haven't missed a beat since then, right? And they have better players in reserve as well. And you also have Xavier Watts, who's playing at a first team All-American level. You have Christian Gray. You have Leonard Moore, who's played really well. You have Jordan Clark, right? You have Adon Schuler. Like Notre Dame has so much more. No, I would be a little bit concerned about their linebackers not having seen, like Bertrand and Marist had a tough game in 2022, the first time they played USC, and then the second game they were obviously much better. So there's a little bit of concern there with Notre Dame's linebackers. The USC does have a way
challenge you a lot with RPO
expose
stuff, and
they can expose those. They can expose those types of the lack of experience playing them. They can go after a group like that. So it'll be interesting to see. But we have to monitor USC. I'm not totally sure how to feel about that game right now. I'm a little bit leery of it, to be honest, at this point, though. Barney M., since we open up against Miami and A&M, do we need to go for the portal again at quarterback? This is actually like a really good question. It does make it not just that, but like it's hard to, I think people in their minds have just said like, okay, like they're going to go from Riley Leonard and they're going to go straight to CJ Carr. CJ Carr is still not throwing. It's been a month since he's thrown a pass. We don't know what the injury is. We don't know what's going on. I know it was supposed to not be a big deal. He hasn't thrown. I don't, does he have to have surgery? I have no idea. Right. So it's just like, it's unclear if he's going to be able to like compete in the spring. I assume yes, but we don't know. And you're not opening with it's not the 2022 opening schedule or the 2023 opening schedule, right? It's those are real teams, Miami and Texas A&M, going in that with a first-time quarterback who has never started a game, or maybe if it's Steve Angeli has started one game. It's a little, makes you a little bit nervous. Has the Notre Dame schedule, the way it's breaking, kind of changed your opinion on that at all?
No, just because, like, I mean, I think they gotta just, if they really believe in Carr or Minchie or Angeli or whoever, like, I think those guys are good enough to ride with, and like whoever wins the job there is going to be good enough to ride with. Like, yeah, that isn't good about the stuff with Carr, and hopefully he's back and throwing again soon. But I also just don't see, like, if you look at like kind of like quarterbacks who might be in the portal, like, because obviously if you're doing it, you're getting like an established guy.
At this point last year, there was open chatter about Riley Leonard and Notre Dame.
Yes. Who's out there? Right. Because I'm looking at the top 50 right now in QBR. So, which is like, I think pretty important too, because it's like running is part of it as well. So it's not just, the passing thing. And like, I don't know about any of these guys, like, that would be available, right? Like, I just don't see it. So I don't know. You could get that. You'd be like, you had the Sam Hartman on the 6th year, and then you had Leonard that it kind of worked out with like Elko leaving and all that kind of stuff too. like, put it this way: if they didn't get Riley Leonard, this year, like, who was it going to be?
Mhm.
If they didn't get Hartman in the other year, it was going to be Hudson Card. Like, no thanks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't see it. I don't think
It's an excellent point that maybe you would like someone with more experience, but the chances of you getting someone who's actually better than what you have in house at this point are less. They're not as good. So that's a really good point you just made on that front. Um, so yeah, I also do not see it. Duke Sinatra, from what you've seen so far, is Knapp a potential long-term answer at tackle, or should he move inside next year? If he moves inside, how much will the techniques and other things he learned this year translate from guard to center, or to guard or center? It's a good point, actually. We kind of answered the first part of that, but the second part of that, how much can he take from being a tackle if they move him to guard and or center next year?
Oh, you can take a lot. You can take a lot from
Right.
it, right? Yeah, I don't think. I mean, there's so much that's translatable, right? So I mean, it's obviously there's differences in it, but it's, yeah, there's a lot of things. Like, I mean, reps are reps when it comes down to it in
For
terms of
sure.
like the technique and stuff you're doing. Yeah, you're going against different types of rushers. You're working on different kinds of blocks and all that kind of stuff. But it's like a lot of it's the same. A lot of it's translatable. And I do think, like, it is totally not out of the question that Anthony Knapp is like the left tackle next year and going
Mhm.
forward. Like, that is definitely a possibility. He's like played well enough as a freshman to think that, yeah, he can play tackle. Like,
Um, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a recent example. This is the one that just popped in my head, but like Bobby Taylor played his whole freshman year at safety, and then his second year he moved to corner. It was fine. If you're playing in games, you're playing in games, right? Like you're gaining something from that, right? It doesn't get thrown away because you're playing a different position. Kind of in this, like, he's still a defensive back, right? It'd be one thing
yeah,
if Anthony Knapp was playing left tackle, and then it's like, okay, now we want you to be a defensive end, right? Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
might
yeah.
not be as
That's totally
translatable,
different. Yeah,
but like he's still playing on the offensive line, and that helps, right? The types of things you're doing there, it definitely helps. And then the second question he has is about Jordan Faison. Is he an idiot for thinking a healthy Faison is Notre Dame's best overall wide receiver? I mean, I think we both kind of feel like that right now. Is that where you're at? Because that's where I'm at. If he's going to be healthy, I think he's there. He's a pretty important player for Notre Dame.
yeah. I mean, I thought he had a chance to be at the beginning of the year before any of
Yeah.
this kind of stuff happened, and um, I just think he adds like a different dynamic there, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I do think that, um, there is something too. Like, he got targeted 6 times in the game too, like, which was a lot more than anybody else.
Mhm.
Um, so, and when you do something with those targets, you get targeted more, and then all of a
Right.
sudden they have more confidence in you too. So, um, I think, yeah, he's a guy I would look out for. That could have been a breakout. Like, that could have been a breakout,
Mhm.
and this is the start of something. I mean, I don't know if he'll truly become like, man, this is just awesome. He'll be like wide receiver one or anything like that, but he could be. I mean, he could be wide receiver one for Notre Dame, but I'm not talking about. I'm talking about like wide receiver one, like a dominant player.
Right.
We'll see, but I think he's well on his way to. I would be shocked if he wasn't like a big part of the passing game going forward.
Yeah. And like you said, they targeted him 6 times. And with on the types of routes that they haven't been hitting with anyone else. And they did it over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, it's their best passing game that they had all year, in terms of the types of throws they were making, the variety. So that just kind of goes to show, like what you said, he does give them a little bit something extra, and That's what you want. You always want that little bit extra in your wide receiver and in your media company. You want that little extra. You want that little bit more than you can get from anywhere else. There are other media companies who can do some things, but not all things. VSR Media can give you all the things that you need, that little bit extra. Founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh, VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Ira Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. All right, next question here. Coming from Stonewall 20. What do you think Army will implement during their bye week defensively after watching Navy get torched on that side of the ball?
I mean, nothing from what the Navy. I mean, they'll study the game and they'll study the tape or whatever, but they run a different defense. So it's like,
yeah,
it's one of these kind of things. It's not like you. I would say you would implement more too. Maybe they're certainly going to see things and be like, maybe Faison the guy we got to worry about a little bit more.
Right.
There's that route or this route, whatever. There's some of that kind of stuff, but I don't see them like implementing things that would drastically change what they're doing on defense based on the Navy.
When you think of it from the other point of view, I think every defense that Notre Dame needs to play is, from this point on, is watching the Navy game and watching the Georgia Tech game and all these other games and thinking, it would be so much better if we had played them in early September, because there are just so many things that they do now that they haven't previously shown, and B, they are so much better at than they were early in the year. And it makes it, I'm sure defensive coordinators, and this is just objectively speaking, right? It's great for Notre Dame. So it's kind of like, it's nice to say and everything, but objectively speaking, defensive coordinators get really nervous when a team starts doing something in week 8 that they haven't really shown in week 3 or 4. When it's like, man, like now they're doing this, right? And so what else are they going to be doing against us that they haven't really shown? And they didn't do it before, not because they were saving it, because they weren't good at it yet. And now that they're becoming good at it, like what else are they going to start to do that they've kind of been working on but haven't brought out in games? It's got to be a big concern for all of them, and especially the fact that like you still have Jeremiah Love, who's dangerous. You still have to deal with all the quarterback stuff. You still have to deal with now the RPO stuff is like a big part of what Notre Dame's doing in the passing game. It just adds so many different parts of what the defense has to focus on. If you're a defensive coordinator now to this point, I don't want to say worried, because they're always paranoid about things. They're always concerned about things, but just like there's so many more problems that you feel like, we really need to, this could hurt us, like really hurt us. And I don't think that was the case earlier in the year. It's Notre Dame's becoming, we kind of talked about this, like they're becoming the type of offense that like is really dangerous for teams to have to deal with, which is good for Notre Dame. They have to keep doing it, right? Just because they've shown it doesn't mean it's going to keep happening, but they're showing a lot of the really good signs of being a good offense and a dangerous offense this year. ND Rumpus, why did we agree to an away game at Miami? Are we getting something in return? Half the tickets or something? I don't think it was a matter of agreement. Right.
Oh, it's the ACC scheduling.
Yeah.
So
it was.
That's just it's the same thing where, like, why are they playing? Why are they playing
Virginia?
Why are they playing Virginia this year? Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's what it is. It's just how it worked out. Like, and they were supposed to play. It was supposed to be Miami at Notre Dame this year, and then at Miami next year. But they backed out of that game, and I don't think that game's being made up. So it's like just awful convenient for them.
Yeah. All right. This looks like South Florida Domer. I know Notre Dame is very secretive on injuries. Is there any intel on Mitch Jeter and whether he will be back for the last 4-game stretch of the season? We definitely want the kicking game solidified during the final sprint to the finish line. I believe he warmed up against Navy. So if that was the case, then I think in a pinch he probably could have kicked. I would imagine that he'll be fine for the last 4 games. Do you have anything else on that?
No,
because they're secretive. I think that the public evidence is that he warmed up in that game. They wanted to rest him, and so they did. I have no reason to believe there's been any sort of setback. He had a bye. He should be good to go for the last 4 games. So
yeah, that's how I would see it.
Yeah, fair question. Fair question there. Irish Dinger. What are your predictions 1 through 12 in order for the playoff?
This
might be harder than the O-line question, to be honest. There's so many moving parts.
I don't even know. At this point, I would say, who's going to finish? Impossible to say who's going to be what it's going to be at the time because, it's so funny. Like this Greg Wasserman has been arguing with another guy in the comments about Indiana for like half an hour. It's okay, guys. You can move on. You don't need to just
honestly, if they're good, I'm good. I haven't. I'm just let them go. It's fine. Everyone's being cool, so whatever.
Yeah, no. They're not being disrespectful or anything.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, like we don't just agree to disagree, guys. I would say Oregon at 1. Obviously, I would say winner of Ohio State, Penn State at 2. Georgia at 3. Texas at 4. Miami. No, God, I can't do Miami at 5.
Wait, how can it be Texas? That's impossible.
Why not? They're 7-1.
Right, but it can't. Only one of those teams can win the conference. The conference winner is going to conference winner.
Oh, you're right. Conference winner. Yeah.
So you would say
okay, but that's why. Then what can they really even do? Like those rankings beforehand? Then if it's like you don't have the conference winner is.
No, that's why it's kind of dumb.
Okay.
Like,
I'm sorry, Dinger. I don't think we can do it. It's not
it's literally impossible. Like I don't.
I would say if I had to pick who was going to win those conferences, I would say Oregon, Georgia, Big 12. I only think one team from the Big 12 is getting in for sure. But I think it'll be BYU. I'll just pick BYU, and just because they smoked Kansas State and they beat SMU, so just like they've beaten, they have the best resume.
Yes,
out of anyone, and I don't know. ACC is tough because I kind of think that Clemson will probably win it. And they'll probably be the 3, but I think they're going to lose another game. Like they played one top 60 team, and it was Georgia, and they got destroyed. And they haven't played anybody good the whole season. And now they got they got 4 top 30 teams this month. So
yeah,
I think they'll lose to one of them at least. So
yeah, I they haven't really. Like you said, they've played no teams with a winning record. So I don't. It's they're. I think they're overrated, and I think that BYU is underrated. To your point, even by me, I think BYU is underrated. So we'll monitor. PNINN. Question 1. Sorry if it's been discussed. What do we think about the KVA roughing the passer call last weekend? Legit call or not? Um, I think it's defensible to call it. I don't think to me it is they're down 34-14 or whatever, or 38-14 or whatever it is, and we feel bad for this kid, basically. Or 44-14, whatever it was. I just think because of the time of the game, I think it was kind of a pity call by the ref. I think it is not the type of play that they're trying to get rid of in college football. And KVA didn't really land on him either. Like he kind of tried to roll off him. He didn't give his full body weight. It's a bad call, but it's also kind of defensible in my mind. The holding on Wagner is the one that's just like that can never happen. Where did you just one last thought on this, Jamie?
Yeah, I thought it was a bad call, the KVA call, but I get like because of what you said about the circumstances during the game, why they called it, and also too like you do see those kind of calls made. I just think it's a dumb rule if that's the case, because it obviously wasn't a dirty play. What I wouldn't look at it and be like, that's roughing the passer.
Right. Okay. Question 2. Let me see if I can parse this a little bit. Are you concerned about the secondary getting exposed in the playoffs? At some point you feel like you lose Ben Morrison, it's going to cost you something, right? It's just the level of play that he's at is just a little bit different than Leonard Moore at this point in his career. Is that a big concern of yours, Jamie?
It's definitely a concern because you'd feel way better if like they were going to play Ohio State,
Right.
and you'd feel a lot better if they had Ben Morrison out there. I'd be like, hey, I think Notre Dame can match up with these guys, like they matched up with them last year, which was like a big question going in that game, and they did. So I think that's that's still in question because you're just asking a lot of Leonard Moore. He might be able to do it, but it just would be tough. But I think most teams, I don't know. Like, I think like if you look at, say, like if you play Alabama and that Ryan Williams kid, he's going to make plays. Who doesn't matter.
Whoever it is.
So, can you just limit those plays? And I feel pretty good about Notre Dame limiting those plays for almost all of these teams, because I don't really think, at least I haven't seen a team that has anything close to like, well, they got Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, or they got T. Higgins, and Justin Ross is just coming on. He's a problem. I don't think there's like the closest I think to that is Ohio State with like a Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. And they got other guys too, obviously, but like I also don't think those guys are like on that level. Maybe Jeremiah Smith is like going to be at that level. I don't know, right? But like I don't know. I don't. It's not as big of a concern. I think it is a bit more of a concern, the fact that they aren't going to, if you felt the pass rush was just a little bit better, that could help that more.
Yeah.
That is more of my concern.
Yeah. I think people need to kind of realize like the Ben Morrison too. And this just kind of occurred to me right now. The Ben Morrison of 23 and 22 is not the Ben Morrison that we got this year, because he's been hurt. I think we need to understand, like, I think it's almost a better option to have healthy Leonard Moore rather than gimpy Ben Morrison this year playing all these snaps, because he was clearly, I mean, this is an injury he tried to play through, right? He left the Louisville game with this problem, and he came into the game with that problem. He left the game with the problem. He came back. He took a shot. He came back and played, right? Which is he's still playing at a high level, right? I don't want to act like he was a bum. He was absolutely not. He's given up less than 50% completions this year. Like, he was playing well, but it's just that like this was going to be a problem throughout the year, and it just wasn't going to be the same Ben Morrison. Like I don't know if I feel that much better about injured Ben Morrison rather than healthy Leonard Moore against like Ryan Williams or whoever, right? It's better to be healthy, especially because Leonard Moore's played so well. It's just like hurt Ben Morrison versus healthy Leonard Moore. I think that like we could be asking this question about like even if Ben Morrison was still playing, like is it a concern that he's playing hurt, right? Yeah, it is. I kind of have the same level of concern about that as I would just Leonard Moore being in there. The fact that that something was physically wrong with Ben Morrison itself was a concern, right?
Yeah.
We just didn't know the extent of it, but it was obviously real. And to be honest, like his numbers were good, but this like visually he didn't look the same. You know, is that a fair statement to you? Like,
Yeah, I
just
think it's fair.
visually, it wasn't the dominance that we saw in 22 and 23. Still good, but not completely dominant. So, um, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Keenan Knight, what was the eval on Rocco Spindler off by Notre Dame in recruiting services? Top 75 player, top 5 guard, great offer list, son of an NFL player, etc. He seemed like a sure thing. He took a long time to develop and was passed up at Notre Dame because of lack of quickness, twitch, agility. Could this not have been spotted in his high school film? I'm not totally sure, Jamie, where you came out on Rocco and his evaluation.
I liked him, but not as much as where he was ranked. Like I thought he was
Right.
like
Like
a top,
I think you were like Blake Fisher is
well, like way better than him.
like
Yes.
people had Blake Fisher rated below Rocco Spindler, as I recall.
Those people were way off, but yes,
Right.
but yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, way off. I think with Rocco, some of it is like, yeah, in terms of like his athletic ability, um, because he's not as athletic as some other guys, and I think that's kind of fair. And I think people putting the expectations that he was going to be like Quentin Nelson were just like way off. Like that was just like ridiculous. Like that was totally unfair to him. And but one of the biggest things with him and why he took longer to play was like the mental side of the game, right? And like being assignment correct and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the reasons. And it's why there were like some people who were like, man, this guy will never play here, which I thought was unfair too. I mean, drink if you think I'm going to say unfair again, because I just said it 3 times in the last minute. But it was going to take. It took him time. It took him time. He was clearly behind there, and he wasn't like good enough physically to kind of like overcome some of those other things too. And he's clearly gotten better with that, and that's improved. But he's not. I also think too, he was someone that you think everybody thinks you're gonna he's gonna grow and do this and become this and whatever. And I think some of it is a little bit, it was like he was so big and such a big dude right away, where a lot of his physical development happened, and he was also like country strong before that too. And so he already kind of came in with that, and he didn't really like, I'm not to say he hasn't gotten stronger and all that, he has, but some of the other stuff that maybe you thought, hey, he's going to get better at this, he's going to get better at that, he didn't get. He was kind of like already at his ceiling. It was like he could only do so much there, and obviously like anyone who's like started 15 whatever games, or how many games he started in at Notre Dame, like, I mean, you're a pretty good football player. But yeah, people thought that he was going to be, an All-American type, and it just didn't happen.
What I'll say to him or about him too is like, we're talking about like everything you just said is why he's not like a top 100 caliber player or like an NFL prospect, right? I think he's played well at Notre Dame. And I think, you know, I don't want to completely compare their games, but like someone like Trevor Ruland, right? Like he came in 2018 and he did a good job, right? He wasn't great. I think like Rocco's bigger than he is, but like it's, Trevor Ruland, not an NFL player, started games for a very good Notre Dame football team, right? And should be proud of that. And I think, the fact, like the way that Rocco has come in and played, like I feel like he very easily could have started this year for Notre Dame and they would have been completely fine. Like the reason that I think the gap between the way that Pendleton played, and by the way, I think this is why it was Pendleton who left the lineup and not Rocco when Strouth was healthy. I think the gap. I don't think Rocco was outplayed by Pendleton in actual games. The way that like it's very apparent why Ashton Craig is the starter over Pat Coogan or something like that, right? I think he came in and played very good football to the point where I don't know that there's been like a huge drop off between what Spindler gives you versus what Pendleton gives you, right? Like I think Billy Strouth is a better athlete, and I think he's a lot stronger and he's a little bit more aggressive. But which is to say, like why the services missed on him as a top 100 player is one discussion. He is not a bust in the way
No.
that I think, the question kind of like, why did they miss on him? He's not top 100, but he's been a good player for Notre Dame. And so I just want to make that kind of clear. Like he was not a bust for Notre Dame in their recruiting class. It is good that Rocco Spindler ended up at Notre Dame. I think he's played well enough to earn that for sure. All right, Oscar. Here we go. Today is Dia de los Muertos, a day to honor deceased loved ones. While not deceased, it feels only right to take a moment to honor football seasons of the past. Each family has an altar of ofrendas, each with its own meaning. The water ofrenda is offered to give the traveler the strength to continue on. Which previous Notre Dame defensive lineman was your favorite as a man who gave the other team the strength to beg to be done with the game? So let's answer that question first. What
Okay.
what Notre Dame D lineman made the other team just like, what? I just want to quit the sport. I'd like to stop. Who would that be?
Ooh. I mean, probably Bryant Young. I mean, out of kind of like my lifetime, whatever, like I would think Bryant Young was that dude. He was a problem. I mean, obviously they've had a lot of great defensive linemen over the years. But I think if for this kind of definition of like straight to be done with the game, like, I wouldn't put Justin Tuck is different than what would kind of fit with that for me. So, yeah, I'll go with Bryant Young.
I'm gonna say Ronaldo Wynn.
That's another good one.
He was a beast. He was a beast in there,
He was a dude.
and he was a big dude. He was a strong dude, and if you go back and watch these games, he has this look on his face like, are you okay? Like, are you gonna like do something to me right now? Like that kind of look. Like I'm gonna rip you to pieces, kind of thing. So that's that. I'll go with Ronaldo Win for that question. Candles are burned as an ofrenda to show the love shared. Which previous Notre Dame offensive lineman burns the flame brightest for you?
I mean, I got to go with Zach Martin. I
Mm.
just think with Zach Martin, like, it's just, he's just probably, I mean, not only is he going to go down as one of the greatest guards that ever played in the NFL, but considering he started for 4 years and played at such a high level for 4 years, like, it is insane that he was not an All-American. He should have been, probably multiple times. He's that guy for me.
Yeah. Um, Calaveras are ofrendas of joy and fun times. What are some Notre Dame games that truly fill your heart with joy anytime you think back on them? So I'll start here. No particular order. Obviously, 2014 Michigan, right? Uh, the pick six, 37-0. It counts. It counts. 2017, 2017 USC was amazing. Was truly amazing. That was like, because not just that, but it was the same night that Michigan lost on the
Oh yeah, the punt.
trouble with the snap. The
Yeah.
ball is free. Oh, what a great call that was. So that was the same night. Notre Dame ran all over USC, and that was like supposed to be a good USC team. So that was fun. I mean, obviously, like I think I mean, some of the older games, right? Like the early '90s games. Like I always think back about like the '93 Florida State game. Like that was great. '98 Notre Dame LSU was a heck of a fun time. Just from like that was the craziest game you've ever seen. Just like pick sixes, multiple. Like I think there were four. It was 39-36 final. Notre Dame wins. I want to say there were 4 or 5 non-offensive touchdowns in that game. There's a kickoff return. There were pick sixes. Notre Dame had a fumble return. Um, what's his name? Jimmy Friday had a long pick six in that game. So that was back and forth. Obviously, 2018 Michigan was great fun. What sticks out for you on this front?
93 Michigan.
Okay.
I would say 93 Florida State as well. Honestly, man, some of these games that are like memorable that they lost the game, like
You
some of
always
them,
remember the
yeah,
losses.
you remember those. I would say 2002 at Florida State.
Oh, that's a good one.
2002 at Florida State, opening the game, play action bomb to Arnez Battle. Ryan Grant had a big game. Very fun game. 06 Michigan State comeback there.
I hated that game. God,
I mean, I hated the game. Like
yeah.
I hated the game while it was going on, but that kind of comeback
Mhm.
and how it happened and Terrell Lambert and all that, it was pretty fun. That was pretty fun. And I mean, I would just say like it's tough with like, I mean, 2015 USC, very, very fun game. 2017 USC, like you said, very fun game. That 2018 Michigan game, like you said, that 2014 Michigan game, talk about fool's gold, but like it just really was.
Remember the 6.
Yes, it was a very was a really, really fun game. And you know what? I'm gonna put Clemson 2020. It's on there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I was thinking that the Clemson 2020 game, I think that was so like honestly special because it was COVID. It was such a weird year, not just for football, but for the world. It was such a weird time. And so I felt like that was the one that I felt like we all watched it in isolation, obviously, but then we were all kind of together too. Like just everyone who was watching the game. Like I think everyone shared that game a little bit more because of the circumstances, because we like it, there were people in the stands, but it felt like we all were in, like when you don't go to a game, like obviously you're watching it, right? But you just feel like you're not connected to everyone. For some reason, that game made me feel like I was connected to like everyone else who was watching it, in a weird way. So I want to point out that one too because that was a big one. Did you want to say another one?
I'll say 2022 Clemson. as well. Just because I didn't think Notre Dame had a chance of winning that game. I just didn't
Yeah.
like where they were. I didn't
Yeah.
like. I did not see it coming. Shout out to John Bryce because he was like the only one, the legend of John Bryce,
The
through
legend of
that
John
day
Bryce.
after he predicted that win, and everyone was like, "Okay, like sure," and then it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, and the way they won that game too. I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Final question of the day. Thank you, Oscar, for that one. Irish 2104. Thoughts on the schedule next year? A&M will be elite because, but besides, I'm not sure Notre Dame is going to be playing a lot of great teams. How that ties into joining a conference. I mean, if the playoffs expand to 16, should Notre Dame join a conference? I think the schedule's good next year. I don't have any problem with Notre Dame's schedule next year. I think I don't. If Notre Dame if things stay the way they are and they schedule like this, You've got ACC, you've got the big in USC, you've got the SEC twice in Texas A&M and Arkansas. I don't know why you need to step out on that. I believe they have a game against the Big 12 in there, I think, or the AAC I saw. I don't know that you need to. I think that's a great kind of schedule when you're playing top teams like that. I don't have any problem with Notre Dame's schedule next year. And especially if they can schedule like that, they truly do not need to be joining any kind of a conference. Where are you at with that?
Yeah, I mean the problem is you're not going to get the schedule every year, but I think that yes, for kind of like how it's set up, like I believe they have 11 games, so they still got to get like a 12th game in there. But I mean, they can get a cupcake, which hasn't been a cupcake for Notre Dame, but they can get a so-called easier group of 5 game mixed in there because they are playing like a pretty tough schedule. They got 10 Power 4 conference opponents. They aren't really playing like you said, the A&M, Arkansas. I don't know enough about like where these teams are going to be at for next year to do it. Like Boise State, like as Coach Hump said, like that is going to be like, I don't know what Boise State's going to look like. I mean, they're good this year, but it's not like they've been good every year, post Peterson, right? So I don't know what they're going to be like next year. Better than most, group of 5 teams, I would guess, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting, fun kind of schedule. Like, for people who complain about like, oh, like what the schedule is like this year, it's like
with the MAC teams and stuff.
Yeah, like I think it's pretty good. It's pretty good, and like, I will say that it looks like it's like how you mentioned about MB saying about like it could be like a 10-2 team you could maybe get in. Obviously that depends which games you win, right? Which games you win. But yeah, it's not it's not an easy schedule. Like it's gonna be tough to navigate, but I do think they're gonna have a pretty talented team next year.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. It's a fun time. Like Coach Hump says, Miami, Arkansas, Texas A&M, USC, Pitt, Syracuse.
BC, which I think Bill O'Brien like seems like he's done a pretty good job with them this year. Definitely going to be better than where they were at. So I don't know. It's going to be kind of interesting because I kind of think like none of those teams, other than at Pitt, which man, I think Pitt is just absolutely it's a mirage, and then they're going to get exposed here in these final 5 games. And then like they could be bad next year, so it's like that game does not scare me, but like I think like Syracuse is probably going to be better next year. BC is probably going to be better. A lot of these teams are going to be better. Oh yeah, like a lot of these teams that they're playing, Oh yeah, huge Narduzzi guy.
Jamie's a
I
big
think
Narduzzi.
can't stand this guy. I can't stand him.
Jamie loves the
I can't
Narduzzi.
stand him. No.
All right. So we can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know what it is. We are going to go live. We'll be back next week talking about Notre Dame and Florida State. Should be good. We're going to hear some stuff from Marcus Freeman. We'll get some updates on the team and all those things. So you're going to want to check us out. Check out irishsportsdaily.com for all the latest on everything. It's going to be a big recruiting weekend. We might have to touch on recruiting next year. We might have to do a recruiting show with Christian or something like that and get him on, because there's some stuff bubbling underneath the surface that we're going to have to talk about. So have a good Halloween, everyone. Enjoy the night with your children or whoever or whatever it is you might be doing. Enjoy the bye. Eat some cheeseburgers. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.